Hi, guys. We got the small crowd today, but that's okay. So this is the post-production workflow panel. I just want to start off by hearing who these guys are, what they do, and how they got to where they are today.
Yeah, okay. Is this on? Testing. Switch it on. That'd be this is a good showcase of my post abilities. Cool. I'm Ryan Turner. I'm the co-founder of the company called Echo Bend. We're about 4.5 years old, but I also head up post there. I was a freelancer for about 12 years out in LA. Did, like most freelancers, pretty much every job that you could find to figure out a way to pay your bills. About a couple years back, I partnered with a very talented business guy, also a producer. He did production, I did post, and we made like kind of a studio. So between the two of us, we did all the different facets of projects. And over the last couple years, we've done everything from music videos to commercials to feature films to documentaries to branded content. Recently, as of yesterday, we have a new 3-time VMA music video. We won with a music video called Super Freaky Girl, which was Nicki Minaj a couple years back. And then we have our commercials. You might have seen some of them. One is, she's very popular right now, Sydney Sweeney, but she was in the bathtub for Dr. Squatch. We did all the Dr. Squatch creative production and post. We're currently doing a whole massive campaign for them called Manlandia, which is kind of this culmination of Avengers of all the different characters that we've had in this environment. And yeah, we have a couple other projects. I mean, more than a couple other projects brewing. So we have a very vast post pipeline across pretty much everything you could possibly need.
All right. Hi, I'm Nathan Ruyle. I own a company. Well, first of all, I'm a sound designer, most of all, and a re-recording mixer and a supervising sound editor. But sound designer is the catch-all. And I own a company in Burbank called This Is Sound Design. And we're one of the, I'd say we're kind of at the top of our game for like indie and then into studio sound post-production. Similarly, I own my company and operate it. I actually don't have any partners, so it's mine and mine alone. And we have a 4,000 square foot post-production facility in Burbank. 2 mix stages, totally turnkey post-production sound. And then, you know, I did my MFA at Cal Arts. I've been doing this for almost 20 years here in LA. And recent stuff we've done, we had Thelma came out last year. We did the 2 jury prize winning films at South by Southwest this year, Slanted and Fuck Toys. We just finished Alex Prager's movie that's going to be coming out with Paramount called Dreamquill. And we're working on Zero AD that's coming out against Avatar, starring Ben Kingsley and Gail Garcia and who else is in that movie?
I don't
know. Yeah, so that's kind of what we're doing. It's like turnkey post-production, sort of old school in that we do it all completely in-house. I do it with the same team that I've been working with, many of them coming up on 10 years. And we usually have 2 or 3 feature films going at any given time. That's pretty much it.
Nice. So it sounds like, especially Ryan, you had mentioned that it started, you were kind of doing everything. It sounded like you were, a filmmaker doing all parts of the process. What kind of made you guys settle on, I'm sure you still do other things, but what made you settle on post-production or your aspect of post-production for your business?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of what the path of least resistance, because I think the less fun the job is, the more people will try to hire you for it. So like if it's a very fun job like acting, very competitive and hard to get a job. But if it's a not fun job like, I don't know, you could say dialogue editing or something, which could be fun, but very tedious, right? Or like rotoscoping, right? You're going to generally have to pay for someone to do that because it's not much fun. So for me, it was just about a pragmatic way to pay the bills. And people in post, I always was interested in post, and I grew up on computers. So when I first started, I did parodies of like Star Wars and whatever things, and learned how to do lightsabers and After Effects. And then I realized, not everyone likes to be on computers. And so that was my first kind of foray. And then when I directed stuff, I would always take them through post. That was just a natural progression for me. And so I realized, oh, wow, well, people like that. People like that. You can take it all the way to the end. And actually, my partner and I, the first project we partnered on was a Facebook watch show. and it was an 8-episode series that no one would ever see because Facebook Watch is kind of weird, and you can't even like search shows. I don't even know why they paid for those. Anyways, we did those shows, and while we shot it, my partner was wrapping production, like paying all the checks, while I was taking it all the way through post. And so I think for me, it was just, there's a cool thing about post. I love the kind of iterative nature of it. I love the ability to play. And I think in any time, whether it's on set or but like you have everything done and you're kind of learning the lessons and putting together the puzzles. I'm a big puzzle person. I love escape rooms. And so post is kind of one big puzzle. Especially I love comedy, and to me, doing live comedy, and I've done like improv and stand-up out here, and then going in post and cutting things together, it's very mathematical and it's fun to play with. Something's either funny or it's not, and you can solve for that if it's not funny, and you can kind of test screen and see different things. And so yeah, I think from my just natural instinct, and then I loved being involved in things and closing it out. And I think that's the cool part of post too, is like oftentimes projects will die and just kind of sit there, but in post you have no excuse. You can just take it to the end and you're kind of polishing up whatever it is. There's so many different types of movies that the script of it is the thing that everyone ends up seeing. So I really enjoy that process.
The sound part of the process in post is, it's a pretty unique. I mean, working in sound in film is pretty unique anyway. It's because it's sort of like taking this kind of emotional, musical kind of side of making work, and then it's like so technical. It's like one of the most technical and complicated processes in the filmmaking process, and so it's this interesting hybrid, because most of the time you're getting something that's kind of leaning one way or the other, but it's literally like the two complete ends of the spectrum, sort of creatively and technically. And I think most people that do what I do, it's like you start out in music or in some version of that. I was a theater kid and started recording music when I was in the late 90s, when digital audio was first starting, and I was like in garage bands and just kind of got excited about. It was like the very beginning of when you could start really just doing things on your own. Everything before that was this like required tons of equipment and expense and space. So it was like, I'm like one of these like children of the digital revolution. It literally the first moment you could do something like that. And so, as loving music, loving the creative side of working with sound and music, and then just loving technology, it was like the perfect way to do both those things. And so then it's just built on itself. And, we're in an exciting time for this work because of the technological innovation. It's like you get the like creative challenge and sort of everything that you get in like being in a garage band or writing songs or writing music. You get that feeling, you get that kind of like to scratch that itch, but you also get to like deal with some of the coolest technology. And it's like now it's like accelerating so fast. So every month there's something new and interesting. And so in that way it becomes this really powerful, mutable, creative art form. And the other reason I just love post-production is because you can I like actually being at the end where things are really set in place, and so you really understand what the architecture and the parameters of what you're working inside of are. And as I'm sure all of you know as filmmakers, it's like sometimes those limitations are actually really helpful.
Hearing you guys talk about technical and emotional kind of made me think about, and this might be specific just to if there's something about sound design as well. How do you manage something like performance versus technical fluency or efficiency? Say like in the cut, it's like things aren't lining up exactly as we anticipated, but this performance might be better. Is there almost a metaphor for that in sound as well? Or maybe you could answer first, Ryan, about, because do you still edit as well? Or
Yeah.
So you could answer first, and then if Nathan, you could talk about sound after that.
Yeah, there's a great book called In the Blink of an Eye, and they talk about the hierarchy of the different levels of like what you could focus on for an edit. But performance is always key. And it's interesting because it's always about different lenses, right? So like one thing I always try to look at is, or it's always a gift, is if you can see what you're making from a different lens. So, when you're making a movie, you can take it from the lens of, I have Netflix and I have 100 other movies I could watch, and I'm turning on this one just to see what it is. And so you have, 5 minutes to defuse that bomb and get them hooked and try to get them to watch your movie, or they'll just turn it off, right? There's also the one that's like, I'm friends with the filmmaker. That's my lens, and I'm watching this because I already like them, or I like this actor. And so or for social media, it's like I'm scrolling and, there's 100 other things, but this has like 5 seconds to catch my attention. So that's what fascinates me, and sometimes, it takes watching it with just someone next to you that hasn't seen it before, and you can just see it from their eyes. It's a kind of magical thing that happens when you're watching an edit, where you can just sit next to someone that hasn't seen it, and you don't even have to get notes from them. You can just like feel it. You're like, yeah, that didn't work. Okay. Or that they did not laugh at that type I thought they were going to laugh at. So yeah, I think that's the thing that's really fun for me is figuring out how to put those different hats on, because especially in the commercial or branded space, you have clients and you have agency, and then you have production, you have the director, and in music video world, you have the artist as well, and all of them have their own things they're asking for. They're like, this doesn't work, right? And so you have to kind of find the note behind the note, and you're like, well, what are they emotionally responding to? Are they responding to the fact that they don't look good in this shot? Right, which 100 people can watch and 100 people won't say that, but they are the client. Ultimately, it's their video. So oftentimes I'm like an eye doctor, so I'm showing them like, hey, here's version A and here's version B. And so rather than showing people hey, you're wrong about this specific note, you just say, hey, here's what you said, and here's me adjusting what you said, and here's what I think you're saying. And so watch these two back to back and let me know if anyone resonates with you. And sometimes they'll just go with the one that they want, but other times you get to put your best foot forward and say like, hey, here's these. I think I know what you're bumping up against. And rather than cutting that joke, let me just do a different take of it, and let's see if that works for you.
My mind was wandering when you were saying I was like thinking about what you're saying, and then I lost my train of thought about what I was going to say. That's not good when you're on a panel. You have to be prepared. So, in terms of this idea of like how the sound in the process really can kind of transform things or reshape things, that's what we're talking about, right? More or less. And you use the word magic, which is like, sound is kind of the actual kind of magic trick in filmmaking. Like literally, there's a great book, as you mentioned, Blink of an Eye, which is an incredible book, and it's by this French theorist. It's one of the only conceptual books about sound in movies, and I highly recommend it. And it's this film theorist named Pierre Nora, and it's translated from French. And in one of the early versions of it, Walter Murch, who's like the original sound designer, because and there's a side story about why my company's called This Is Sound Design that's kind of related. But, Walter Murch was the first sound designer in film because Coppola worked in theater and there were sound designers in theater. And so he gave him that credit when Walter Murch that credit on those early Coppola movies. But Murch talks about in the intro to that book how back years and years ago, they put they wanted to kind of understand how perception worked. We experience things the way they do. So they put people in MRI machines, and they did a brain scan so they could look at how their brain activity was happening. Maybe it's not MRI machines, where they could look at brain activity. And so what they did is they showed them moving images. And ultimately what they realized is that if you show someone moving images, just moving images and no sound, it lights up the intellectual part of your brain, the logical part of your brain. And then as soon as you put synchronized sound to it, it activates the experiential part of your brain. So immediately your brain just kicks in to this mode is which you just have when you're walking through the world and experiencing life. So it's 100%. When that synchronized sound happens, you're tricked into thinking it's reality, basically. And that's why sound in cinema and post is what we're doing, is generating that experience from the moving image. And so, that's what's so great about this work. And it's like there's all kinds of ways that manifests. One of them is, one of my favorites is just when a filmmaker, especially like maybe a first-time feature filmmaker, maybe they've never worked in like a real post process, and they'll come in for the first time after we've like done the pass on the movie and cleaned up the dialogue and put in all the sound effects and just kind of sound right. And they'll come in and the movie is completely transformed for them. And they're suddenly like, oh, I have like a real movie. This is a real movie. because they've never experienced it in the way that they've experienced movies in a theater their whole life until that sound comes in, and then all of a sudden the magic trick happens even for them. Because of this, we could get I'm very interested in neuroscience because I think perception and experience are so important to what we do and really deeply understanding it. And I could talk a lot about the different reasons why we're able to do what we do in terms of the way our brains work. But, ultimately, because trick, we can kind of be magicians. And so one of the cool things is that because anything synchronized to an image tricks you into thinking it's reality, we can just do all kinds of stuff. I can put in 1,000 different sounds on a door closing, and you may not even perceive that it's anything but a door closing because you're completely seduced by it. And we're doing that all the time. And in fact, sound in movies, the whole thing is just kind of like this. It's one big kind of magic trick that is actually, it's hyper reality. And so ultimately, what we then were tricked as a viewer is we actually believe like, oh, this is real. My mind believes it's real. And in fact, well, actually, no, there's like 500 tracks of stuff we put in here, all to create this version of realism that is actually so much more heightened than actual realism. And then that's the magic. That's cinema. So that's my favorite thing about what I do and all the different ways that kind of manifests.
Oh, I was going to say something really quickly because when you watch Lord of the Rings, there's like a distinct point when they touch I'm a nerd, but the Palantir, and he's looking at touches the circle object, and the Eye of Sauron flashes. And I remember being like, I was trying to replicate that effect for like a commercial or music video experiencing. I was like, oh, there's a cool transition, like it's this crazy flash. But if you go frame by frame, it's just a hard cut in and out. It's the sound that makes you think that it's a crazy transition. And when he puts on the ring, it's always just a hard cut. There's literally nothing combining those shots visually, but the sound convinces you that it's like a really crazy transition. And it's the same thing with Guy Ritchie movies or Edgar Wright movies. Like, it's always in the sound design that makes the transitions feel very amazing. And obviously there's visual elements too, but it's like the sound does a lot to trick you.
Yeah. I'll give one great example of this from a recent movie, this movie Thelma. I don't know if you guys saw it. It was out in theaters. It's on Hulu if you want to watch it. One of my favorite things in that movie is, it's about June Squibb is like basically on the run in the movie. So it's sort of like a chase and caper movie, but with a 90-year-old woman. And one of the big scenes is there's a scooter chase on mobility scooters. And what we did is we laid in all these little car chase elements within it that are all like subtle. They're not like, super obvious. There's tons of stuff happening in there. And what happens is that like subconsciously, suddenly it becomes this very exciting. In the end of the day, we're all going to be in the mix stage, maybe for a week or 2 weeks or a month. Very rarely these days. Mostly it's a week. And, one of the real challenges is that you have to take in as a director all of the movie, and you're dealing with your own mishigas about this shot that didn't work and this performance you don't like and that ADR line that's not good. So you're dealing with all that and just all of the whole histrionics of the movie, right? And all the time you spend in the edit and all that temp love that you developed. And so one of the things I'll say the first day before we get started to the directors, I'm like, okay, we're here, and what we're actually trying to do here is like, we're not trying to make the perfect version of the movie in your mind. We're actually trying to make the perfect version of the movie that the audience is going to be able to experience. And they're going to be able to take that in, and you have to know that they're going to come in with no preconceived notions. They're not going to have any idea about anything that's coming at them. And so if we're going to succeed at mixing this movie, what we need to do is we have to put ourselves in the mindset of the audience, actually. Because if you're in the mind of the director, you're actually going to be working against the experience sometimes, Not always. Obviously, there's important decisions to make and a million important decisions to make. I'm going to kind of be present, think about it. And like, if you've meditated, you're going to be present. You're going to put those things out of your mind. Or I also, as having an acting background, method acting is, Stanislavski, the Russian director. One of the really cool ideas in Stanislavski is the magic if. And sort of all method acting is built on this idea is like, if I can conceive of this experience or this moment. And so I also sometimes talk about that because a lot of directors, maybe they have a relationship to that in some way, especially actors who are directors. I'd be like, we get into the magic if I was just walking into this theater for the first time. I never saw anything. I know nothing about this. How would I experience it? And if we can get to that, that's when like really great things start to happen in the process.
That's great. Yeah, just kind of keep trying to look at it fresh.
It's very smart.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, since this panel is kind of about workflow, how does your guys' workflow change, say, from a small budget or even something like a micro budget to larger, perhaps even studio budgets as those, grow?
I think that in production, when we're doing production, there's an interesting thing that comes from like doing a $10,000 music video and $1 million music video, is because you'll talk to the crews and the crews will be like, well, we can't do this, and it's on the $1 million one. You're like, well, yesterday we were on a $10,000 music video and we got this shot, and they'll be like, oh, okay, I guess you could do it that way, right? And but post is a bit different, because what you're really buying is time and ability to like put full tilt into something to get into the flow of something. Oftentimes we have to there's senior editors and there's junior editors. So you have junior editors going in for stuff that doesn't have the higher budget, but then you still have the brand expectations of what Echo Bend as a company is putting out. And that's a difficult challenge. I'm a big advocate for mentorship and like growth. And so oftentimes I'll communicate with people like, hey, here's how we're making this come to life, is by, with our trainees, taking a stab at these things. And there's going to be a little bit more of I would say growing pains and some comms and things that might not be as smooth as the higher budget experience. But I can guarantee you that we won't be delivering this any lower than we do in the it's just time usually the only difference. If you can't miss, if you have like a crazy turnaround, like we recently did a project that we're shooting in Norway on a Tuesday and we were uploading it on Friday, the next Friday, like a week later, had like 100 VFX shots. It was wild. But like we had no room to miss with that. And that even goes back to what you're talking about with the temp stuff. It's like there has to be a lot of trust between, with that, it was the artist, the label, the creatives, the director, and us. Like there's a lot of trust and trust is earned. It's not something that you're just given. You can't just be like, oh yeah, trust me. And that's always a very difficult thing. We're on like a pretty lower budget commercial, but the expectations are like insanely high. And I'm just like, I called it from the get-go. I'm like, for me, we're doing you a favor. For you, you're paying more than you've ever paid. And I'm like, this is bad math. This doesn't necessarily check out. But I'm flagging it off the bat. And I'll do every job once with a new person just to kind of see, can we make this smooth? Can we make it so that way you trust us and we can make it efficient? And a lot of that means just someone getting ground to a pulp for like a month and basically going like, all right, well, we didn't enjoy that. But there's always a world where the trust is gained and then they go, cool, we don't have to micromanage you every single time. We know that you're going to deliver, because oftentimes with our brand, it works best when it's just like, cool, how the sausage is made is less important than the end product. And we don't miss deadlines. And so you're going to give us this footage on a Monday. We'll give you a cut on a Thursday. How we get there is completely separate, right? But there's also the model in post houses, which we don't really do, which is roster based, right? Which is very much like, okay, we're going to this post house because of this shiny editor. And then you get to say, oh, this shiny editor has this reel, which they've done exactly your job. If it's a fountain commercial and they've done like 100 fountain commercials, and it's like, we're going for that editor, right? And then you get to now call the shots and dictate, okay, well, that means you get paid this. And that's what this time. But if you're short of that, where it's just, hey, we're coming to you, give us some options. There's a lot of trust involved across the board. So for me, it's about learning trust through actions. Post is very tangible. You either hit it or you don't. It's like pretty objective. Some people could say that their cut's better than it is, but generally, if a cut's great, 10 people can watch it and 10 people go, yeah, that's a great cut, right? And so there's a kind of finite, more black and white binary situation with post, where and there's been times when we did like this, we're early on, we're doing whatever we could, and there was this guy that had like a jeans commercial, and like we pulled every favor we had to get this done. We had the director that he signed off on, we had the models that he signed off on, and then we did this project, and it was like it was not going to pay our bills. Like we were going to be lucky if we even like broke even. And we sent a cut, and he was like, what is this? This is nothing like I expected. And it was crazy because all along the way we had the paper trail, but it's an emotional response, right? So you can't really win. So for us, we're like, hey, I'll take one more crack at it. Otherwise, don't even pay us the second fee. This is not a money job for us. Take the footage and just do what you want with it. Like, this is clearly, I'm not going to convince you that what we did is correct, and you're not going to convince me like that what we did is not up. Man, my watch is really talkative. But yeah, so I think that everything's about like these long-term relationships, and you're finding people that you vibe with, and clients that you vibe with, and people that you can trust, and that just takes earning it. So yeah, I don't know if that's. I feel like I have a tendency to go off topic too, but yeah.
I mean, it's all true, and the same thing that I deal with. It's time is money. That's just the reality. But then there's tiers, right? And the truth is like more money also always doesn't mean better, and it also doesn't mean. It often just means more annoying things to deal with and more versions, and sometimes having more versions works against you. Often it works against you. So I mean, as like business owners, there's a lot of growing pains, and it's like when I first started out, it was like even knowing how to price things or value things or how much time something will take, it's so difficult. I'm sure you guys as filmmakers, it's just so disorienting to even have any idea. And so it takes a lot of time and experience. Like, I don't think I really figured that out for like a good 5 years, And so now, like, based on my own experiences, my own team, hundreds and hundreds of movies, I have a pretty good sense when I look at something of like what it's going to take to really do it. And then what is it going to take to do the version that's like, a little better or a lot better. Like, I have a sense of how it scales. And sometimes even on like lower budget stuff, we'll be like, okay, here's like 3 budgets. These are all options, and we'll do a great job on any of these, but all of them are just going to have trade-offs, and it's just going to mean less time for us to dig into certain aspects of the process. And so, so often now with this business, it's like the budget does dictate often. Like, a lot of times it's like, this is the money we have, what can we do? And so then, I'm just trying to be like, okay, let me break this down. And one of the things I learned early on is I don't do blind budgets or black boxes or flat rates ever, ever, ever. I will not do them. If you demand it, I will not take the gig. Because the truth is that like it is a recipe, like you were talking about relationship, it is a recipe for a bad relationship. And most of the time, if you're having this conversation, you already know there's not going to be a lot of money. And so then if you're getting in a position where we can't really look at all the work needs to be done and all have a conversation and an ongoing conversation about what the process is going to be, because it's many parts and many aspects of it. And what the values of different things are and the cost of the room, all this stuff. If we can't be in a place where we can have that ongoing conversation, it's kind of just not gonna work. And I know at the end what's gonna happen is someone's gonna be mad. And very often these projects aren't like, we're lucky if we get like a 10% profit. Like it's very low. So then it's like, okay, I did this, there's not really much profit, and you left mad at me because like you felt like I didn't do enough work for you. So what I do is I just break it down. Here's literally granularly, here's the Foley, here's the editorial, here's the mix time, here's the ADR hours. And then I say, we can move around inside of here, we can reapportion it, but this is gonna be it. And so we together have to figure out what are the trade-offs and have those conversations as we move along. And usually 99 times out of 100, that's great. And once in a while you get somebody who just has unrealistic expectations. They're never going to be happy. I'm pretty good at avoiding those projects, but about once a year I'll get one. And, and those are their own emotionally challenging things, I had one recently where it was like, basically it was bad dialogue from on set. We actually did a pretty good job with it, I thought. The movie turned out pretty good. We finished mixing it, and then I get a call the next week. He's like, I was listening to this. I just don't think this dialogue sounds very good. I was like, well, I mean, we can always go back in and work on it, like I could we can go back and clean some of these scenes. And then basically at the end of the day, it's like, he was like, well, if you're not going to do it for free, I'm going to take it to my friend. So what I eventually heard is that he went around town to all the other companies like my size, and every point they got to the point where they went and I gave him the session. I was like, take the session, man. Like I'm good. I would be glad to never see this again. And so he took it around to all the mix stages and the mixers, and everybody started calling me. They're like, what's going on with this guy? He's like, and how did you clean the dialogue that well? So it was like very vindicating, and it isn't always like that, but it was very vindicating. So, I just think that I feel like I've been privileged to do right now I'm doing a movie that's a $50 million budget, you know, and it's awesome and it's great to be able to spend months working on something and really dig into it. But even then, if we look at the process I'm doing on a movie that has like such a small fraction of that budget versus the big budget movie, we're never going to do a movie that we're not doing Foley. I just won't do a movie without Foley because I don't think you can do it and it be good. I think that, you know, there are minimums and we come up with a sliding scale of rates. We have an ULB rate. You know, we love some of our ULB movies. Some of those have gone on to direct bigger movies, and that's nice when that works out. It doesn't always. Ultimately also some of our like what would be a low budget movie, but a real budget, you know, like a real money where we can put the weeks in to get a pretty good mix and get everything. Often some of those I make as much money per hour and per days in the studio as I make on things with much bigger budgets, because by the time you deal with all the headaches and all the nonsense, so, you know, it isn't always even for me like, oh, I'm only looking for the next big $30 to $50 million movie. Actually, I really like doing indies. I really like how that opens up the process, how it actually lets us have real relationships, you know, and really creatively work together. So I think that's also an important point.
Yeah, I'll ask just one more question, then we'll open it up to the audience. But what softwares now, you know, we talked earlier about, you know, how fast things are changing. What softwares now are you really excited about? And since there's probably a lot of independent filmmakers here in the crowd, perhaps even ones that, you know, they are capable of using, you know, ones that, you know, aren't for larger budget films or projects.
Yeah, I started on Premiere like back before Final Cut 7, and then I've just stayed on it. So we're a Premiere house. A lot of people still use Avid, and some reality people use Final Cut X, although I feel like it's less common. But yeah, we use a Premiere. I think Premiere is, I mean, every project in software has its pros and cons. I know people do DaVinci because it's a free software, and it's crazy how certain things in DaVinci are easy and then certain things in Premiere are like hard, and each software has its like pros and cons. Like even just the ability to export individual clips with handles is like annoying in Premiere, and then you can do it really easy. So it's like for us, it's we're not really, we're loyal to an extent, but like that's one thing I really tried to mandate across my team is like we're all nimble, and the best software wins. If there's a new software that drops tomorrow that's way more efficient at things, then we'll just use it and we'll adapt it, because we don't have the luxury of we started in the midst of COVID and then had the strikes and everything else. So we've kind of like, we're like the Bear Grylls of the wasteland. We've learned how to survive off of essentially nothing. And so we very much have to be efficient with things. And so it's very fascinating when I'm working with much more the standard industry people, which is great. But like for me, a Quad 4XQ file, which is to nerd out, it's like an uncompressed MOV file for video, is great. But other VFX mandate like a DPX image sequence, which is very large and very cumbersome. And if you actually go granular, they're not much different. But some people have their existing pipeline they built like back in the 90s that have these pipelines. And so you're like, cool, all right, well, I'll use yours for this. But when it comes to ours, we found an efficiency working this way. And so we're all about efficiencies and in making sure that we're not wasting time doing the remedial stuff. And yeah, so I guess that involves like the Adobe suite. We do DaVinci for color. Obviously, like Pro Tools is the standard for sound, and VFX for everything from Nuke to Maya to After Effects, and there's Unreal and there's Blender and there's a million different tools within that world. In VFX is its own monstrosity in terms of pipelines and artists and compositing versus like texturing versus modeling versus everything. So like you have to have a really instilled way of handing things off if you're not going to just hire the one-stop shop people. And I think that's a lot of what we've done often is I'm kind of a lone wolf and started as a lone wolf, meaning like I was my own post house basically. And so when I've grown and scaled, I've just partnered with other lone wolves, and we've made kind of a wolf pack, you could say. And it's allowed us to be to scale in a very cool way. And then we're just sitting next to each other and sharing knowledge. And that's the one thing that I think I get really frustrated about this industry. And it's maybe just because of a lack of proximity, but it's like the gatekeeping of knowledge and the gatekeeping of tools and the gatekeeping of shortcuts and things and efficiencies. And so like for me, I'm very much like, what is the most efficient way? How do we sit next to each other and be like, do you have a better way? Do you have better shortcuts? Do you have a better of this? And just learning from each other. Because we're all running in the same direction. And I feel like there's certain people that make us feel like we're all fighting for the scraps. But I feel like in reality, the more we share, the more we rise up together in a lot of ways.
Yeah, you said Pro Tools is kind of the standard for audio post. And Pro Tools is interesting in that it's like that's kind of basically the mixing hub. But the truth is we use like probably 500 different pieces of software that are all in these plugins. And so that's just constantly evolving. There's new stuff every month. Obviously, the AI element is coming into play in terms of like the back ends of things like cleaning dialogue. It's just that has transformed in the last 2 years, in the last 5 years, in the last 10 years. Like when I first started doing this and what we could do to compare to what now, it is like 1,000 times different. And it's great because it's like, I spend a lot less time like sitting there fiddling trying to make something audible, and I can spend more time doing creative, interesting stuff. And you know, it's just it's across the board. There's so many different variations of like types of software that are happening with sound. It's like hard to even like zero in on. Like I can tell you about a few different things that are just so interesting. Like one of the plugins we use is called Soothe, and one of the things as a mixer, because I spend most of my time just mixing and then supervising a team in terms of editorial. But like early in my career, I spent so much time in mix stages where you're dealing with these big horn speakers that like just making dialogue not be edgy. It's like if you ever like done low budget filmmaking and then you like mixed it in someone's garage and then you went to like premiere it at the festival and it comes out of those speakers and it's like, oh, it's hitting my ear. That's like fighting that edginess is like a huge part of mixing. And then they invented this plugin, probably has some little magic underneath, and it just makes the edginess go away. And I don't have to think about it anymore, and I don't have to sit and fight it. I just like, oh, I turn this knob a little more when I need to. And so things like that are just so cool because it creates more efficiency, and it creates more efficiency in the context that I built to do this work towards doing more creative. And that's always what's happening is as we're eliminating what's more technical work, we're getting more creative time. So
yeah, I think that's the key, at least from the trajectory that I see or hope to see, is like if these kind of new tools like AI and other ones take the remedial task and make that more efficient, then the stuff that we should really be spending time on is making something great, which is actually very, very difficult. And going back to like, I remember something I was going to say about the temp love stuff, because oftentimes it's how long you're sitting with something. And so if someone's sitting with the song for months and they just have been watching it over with months, to change that neural pathway, the way that they're experiencing it, is not going to be one sitting. Oftentimes they have to sleep on it. They have to step away from it. They have to spend weeks like letting it sit, and then maybe watch it with another audience over here, watch it with another audience over there. And there's a world where they still go, okay, even after that, I still like this original song. But you have to give it a shot, and that takes time. Time is the most scarce resource.
Now we're talking about budget.
We're talking about budget with time. And so if you're able to now get these tools to make your time more efficient, meaning you can get the remedial stuff done faster, now you can spend time sitting with the more creative, because no one knows anything. Like anyone that goes like, I know I'm going to never make a miss on any project, or I know exactly what an audience is going to feel when this script comes to screen, is like it's just incorrect. Because there's so many intangible ways of like how it translates, of how the actor, the micro expressions could be different things that you don't even understand. And then when you watch it, you're like, that should work. Logically, that should work, but it doesn't. And so we have to iterate now. We have to kind of play with what we have and see what this next chapter of this project is with what we have. And so I think that's what's really cool about these new tools that are freeing up more time. It's the time needs to be spent on the stuff that's really difficult.
Well said. So let's open it up to any questions. So if anybody has questions for these guys, feel free to raise your hands. You're first back there in the hat.
We're stacked.
Okay, yeah.
Go for it.
So I'm a music composer, so I'm curious how music is played into your workflow and how you think about the sound mix, because in so many commercials especially, they both are taking center stage or trailers. Sometimes the creative direction of the music could influence the sound. What's your view on that?
Yeah, I mean, I spend a lot of time as a mixer working with music. It's like half of what I do. Is as a studio owner, I've consciously made the choice that we don't produce music and we don't even do music editing. We don't really touch music that much. And honestly, I think music is such a it's so oblique in terms of the process and like so about taste and about it's so hard to like what I do. I'm like, okay, I can break a budget down and I know what it's all going to take. And then it's like, oh, score, who knows, And so I think that early in my career, I composed some things and I worked directly with producing music for films. And I realized it was like, this is a part of this I can't get a handle on as a business owner, and so I've really kept that outside. But as a mixer, mixing feature films, I deal with music all the time. And one thing within that is that even I'm a sound designer, I'm a sound editor, but I work with a team. And on most feature films, it's like I'm there at the beginning creatively, and I'm giving a lot of direction. I'm saying this is the direction we're going to go in. But even within the sound editorial we're doing, I try to kind of stay out of the way and not get too attached to any of it. Because what I want to do as a mixer is I want to be able, when all the sound editorial comes in and the music comes in, I actually don't want to be in a place where I'm like, well, I know our sound, so I'll just push that music down. In fact, I sort of feel it in a mix of a film. I feel as close to the music as I do to the sound on some level. I try to keep that distance in terms of owning it. And so then within that, I mean, it's always this delicate balance within the process of a film, certainly when we're at the point of mixing, but even when we're talking through what we're trying to do with the movie. And, one of the benefits of doing larger budget films is that we get more time to plan, to talk, to sit in the room with the composer, to think about how we can get into a scene. Or even the movie I'm doing right now, Zero AD, we're they're actively writing the score. They're going to go to record the score in 2 weeks with the orchestra. So they're right in the middle of it. But 3-4 months ago, we sat and looked at scenes and we're like, oh yeah, I think this will be sound, and then this is where the score will take over. So we're really thinking about that even ahead of the scoring process and where the handoffs will be. But the nice thing is I've worked with that composer now on 3 films. So we trust each other. Whereas in a lot of the times there's notorious stories of people almost get into fistfights on the stage because it's my music and my sound. So I really try to just be really kind of zen about the whole thing and really what serves the movie and what carries the kind of experience and the emotion. And if you key into that, then that balance it's always there. It's always in there somewhere. So I hope that answers it. I don't even know. That's
percentages.
Your area.
Yeah.
How much are you saving?
Oh my goodness. I mean, it's such a variable. Obviously, if it's a very VFX heavy movie versus one that's just a talking head back and forth, and I think that plays into yours too. If it's an action movie, that's going to be a big difference. With fight scene and choreography, if he's going to have to basically do car, explosions and things. But yeah, I mean, generally it just gets the short end of the stick. They put all the money into getting across the finish line, and then post they're we have nothing, and can you make it with nothing? And you're no. Generally that's not encouraged. But
once I went to I used to do a little bit of on-set recording, and a producer I knew was oh, can you come help us? Our guy didn't come in for the day. This is 15 years ago. And I went and did it. Man, they had great catering on this set. It was awesome. They had omelets. It was awesome. And then 3 months later, I get a call, and the director, and he's yeah, I mean, we have literally no money. Will you do this for free? I was man, you shouldn't have had such great catering.
But yeah, I think it's I don't know if I want to, don't hold me to this, but 10% is a general, if it's $1 million budget, $100K set apart for sound, or it's up sound for all post, is a rule, but it can vary. A $10 million movie, $1 million for post, but it just really, the movie informs so much, right? And I think how long you need to edit it, what kind of because I think the variables are VFX, titles, graphic design, and I think one thing that people don't set aside money for much is marketing, but you should, especially in post deliverables. Like, especially in this day and age, if you're going to be anywhere close to distribution, you're going to be cutting probably your own trailer. You're probably going to be cutting your own social media 9x16 cut downs and trying to get the word out about it. And all that stuff is stuff that takes time and effort, and hundreds of thousands of dollars if someone else is charging you for it. So yeah, I mean, I think in the commercial range, I'm generally never one that says a number first, because someone's like, I have no money, I have $500,000, and someone's like, I have no money, and it's literally no money. And so you're like, which one are you? And also, do you trust that they say they have no money, but they actually, then you go pick up the hard drive from their house, and it's a very nice house, and you're like, is that no money? This seems like money. And so that's where that trust comes in. It's like, you want to be with partners that are going to, when there's opportunity, give you the larger budgets, and not just lock you in, like Nathan's saying, to a fixed fee, because it's a very dangerous route to take. They'll just go, okay, cool. And then when they budget in their head, they're going to be like, cool, I'll just set it across $10K and you're going to be set. And that's how they just do it. Even if they have the million, or they have the 2 million or 5 million or 10 million, there's going to be, 10K for sound. That's just, Nathan did it last time, he'll be fine. And so it's always a conversation. It's always even though you want to trust people, you have to audit that somehow. You have to get respect, and then when the people, but that's the instrument that I've really, I think, refined, is the ability to kind of gauge whether someone's lying to me or not, I guess. But it's are you an authentic person or not? Are you selling me these things because you think that's what I want to hear, or is this the honest truth? Do you have $1 million you're setting aside and you just think this is good business to make the budget lower, or you actually care about this project and are asking what the bare minimum is to make this the best it can possibly be? And it is a math thing, because at a certain point, when you start cutting below certain numbers, it harms the film, and you're going to have asterisks, and that's just something that's inevitable. And so we're always trying to find it. I mean, I'm, as business owner too, you're always trying to find what is that lowest you can get them, so that way the money's spent smartly. You give them a timeline that means it's not going to get overcooked, and too many people are there's a real big benefit to a nice quick turnaround, especially in commercials. We're doing a bunch of these Dunkin', Buffalo Wild Wings, just really fast turnaround commercials, and they're nice because they're a 3-day edit, they're uploaded the next week, and they're not great budgets, but they're efficient, and they can keep coming in, and the client doesn't micromanage. And I'll do that to the end of the world, because then I can train new people up. And so there's always these pros and cons, and I think it's gonna be just you sussing them out. I would say it's always about them giving the first number and seeing where their first, what are you hoping this is gonna be, and then honestly ask them what their production budget is, and then they might lie to you still, but there's a world where they say the truth, and then it gives you a gauge.
I mean, in the sound world, I'll just say.
Sorry. I think we got to wrap it up real quick, but well, okay.
I was just gonna say, in the sound world, the general rule of thumb was always 1 to 2 mil or 1 to 2%. But now that people make movies for $150,000, that's not real. So it gets very tricky too, even those shorthands, because of just the nature of production and post and how variable things can be now. It's amazing the movies that can be shot just because it's a group of comedians who are really smart and know how to use camera, and they spent no money on production, but they actually need a lot of post-production to make the movie something that can go into a theater. So it's so variable. It's so hard to even land on a percentage because of that.
Gotcha. Thank you.
All right, I'm sure these guys would like to hear some more questions, but let's give a round of applause to Ryan
round of
and
applause,
Nathan.
Please. Guys, thank you for taking the time with us. I think you're the only one that got hit with the sun throughout, so I'm lucky it's not our wonderful panelists. Ryan, thank you for being such an incredible moderator.
Thanks, Ryan.
Ryan just got married last week.
Wow.
To this wonderful woman over here. We're very proud of them. I have to do those things because we love you. Thank you guys so much. We have a 30-minute break now. If you guys are willing to stick around for any questions personally, that'd be awesome. And then we have 30-minute break, and then we're down to our last panel today. So let this 30-minute break, besides questions here, reminding you, the pool deck is probably going to close during the next panel. So if you haven't chatted with any of the awesome companies today, I'd go over and take a look. But that's all. Thanks, everyone.